Welcome all to this webinar about basic statistics in Origin. My name is Ishwar Iyer. I already see some questions here. Someone is asking, are you going to record the session? Thank you for the reminder. Yes, I am recording, and we will have the recording available to you early next week. Okay. During the webinar, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A panel. In the Q&A panel, you can type specific technical questions, and my colleagues from OriginLab have joined as well. And I will try to monitor the Q&A panel as well as we go along. The chat window, please use that only for comments if you have any general comments. It's hard for me to keep track of both. So technical questions, it's better to put in the Q&A panel. And please don't try to chat directly with the host, me, because I may not be able to watch the chat while I am presenting. Okay, so welcome again. Today we have two webinars. This is about basic statistics. I'm going to go over some very basic things about performing statistics in Origin on worksheets and graphs and such. Here is my rough outline for the webinar. And this project will be shared with you as well. And in case you did not know, on our website, if you go to the main page and click on support, you'll see a webinar icon in the middle towards the bottom. If you click that, you'll see upcoming webinars. So today there are two, like I told you earlier. I would recommend that you also attend the 2 p.m. advanced statistics to get a bigger picture of what's possible with statistics in Origin. And if you click view all, you'll see our schedule for the next coming several weeks up to the end of September. We'll come back and add November later. So you feel free to register for the ones that you're interested in. Also, during the webinar, we will, towards the end, there will be a poll. We'll be asking you questions about how things went today, but also what topics you would like to see in the future. So we appreciate your feedback very much. So please take a few minutes towards the end to answer the poll questions. On this webinar main page, there's also a button for all recorded webinars. So if you go here, you'll see recordings from all of our past webinars, recent ones. So what we are presenting today will be put up there early next week. We have recently put the webinars also on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, you will see timestamps so that you can skip through and switch to sections of the webinar that you are particularly interested in. So that's a convenient way for playing back the recording. Okay. Again, please feel free to ask questions during the webinar in the Q&A window. Okay, so let's get started. First, I have some opening remarks about statistics features in Origin and Origin Pro. In general, as you may already know, we have two products, Origin Standard version and Professional version. I would recommend that you bookmark this page if you are fairly new to Origin or to statistics in Origin. This is under the product area. Let me just show you how to get there. So if you just go to OriginLab and click on products and click on Origin or Origin Pro, it opens a page with a summary of what are the key features in the product, graphing, graph types, and such. And further down, there is statistics here. So on the right side, you will see a category. So if you click on statistics, there is a short blurb about statistics. But if you click read more, that's the link I had in the project. When you get the project, of course, you can simply click the link. So if you open, you'll see this gives you a really good summary of what's possible in with statistics in Origin and Origin Pro. So there are several key areas: descriptive statistics, ANOVA, hypothesis tests, multivariate analysis, survival analysis, power and sample size, ROC curves, and apps. And some features are available only in Pro. So for example, multivariate analysis has several tools and all of them are available only in Pro. So you may want to take a look at those. And if you do not have Pro, you could contact our team to figure out how you can convert your standard version to pro version. Okay. That said, let me switch to the product now and talk about a few basic things. So the first thing is about menus. So you may already know that Origin has several window types such as worksheet, graph, matrix window, layout, and such. And there are subtle changes to the menu when you switch from one window type to another. So if I have a book active and I go to the stats menu, you will see many options here. I am using Origin Pro version 2020B, which is the latest released version of Origin. Okay. You may see something different based on what your version of Origin is. Okay. And if you switch to a graph, you will see that this statistics menu is gone. Most of the statistical operations are done on a worksheet. If I go to a metrics, same thing. Under analysis, you may see something, but there isn't a statistics menu. So typically for statistics, you start from a workbook. Okay, so that's point number one I wanted to make clear. Another aspect is that in addition to all the tools available in the product, we also have apps. These are free. In Origin on the right side, there is an apps bar that is docked on the right side. If you don't see it, you go to the view menu and there is an entry to toggle it on and off. If you click on add apps, you will see an app center where you can see what's new and popular, or you can search for specific items, or you could in general type a keyword like stats, okay, and then simply hit search. And it will show you all the apps that are available for statistics, okay? And then you can download the ones that you like. Keep in mind that each app has its own minimum version. So for example, 3D Confidence Ellipsoid requires Origin Pro 2019 SR0 or later, okay? This is just based on the history of when the apps were developed and which version they apply to, okay? And the apps are free. None of them cost you anything. So please feel free to download them. Once you download them, you can put them in separate tabs. You can right click and create a new tab and add any app. Like if I go to a particular app, I can right click and say, show it in which tab view. Okay. So I have already done that and I have chosen some apps here. I'll show a couple of them in this basic webinar. My colleague James Chen, who's doing the advanced webinar at 2 p.m. today, may show more. Okay. The other aspect is the search button. You may notice that in recent versions of Origin, there is a button at the bottom left that you can click and type things there. So for example, I can type M for menu and frequency count to see, are there frequency count entries in the menu? So it's showing me there's a descriptive stats frequency count, there's a 2D frequency counts binning, there is a discrete frequency tool. So that's one way to look here. I can say A for app and histogram, for example, or binning, and then it might show you apps that are available that are related to binning and such. So that's a useful place to go. The menu may be a little overwhelming, so you can quickly find the menu using this search button. By the way, if you click on this settings, here it shows you M for menu, A for apps, V for video and such for quick search so that you can get specific category help. Okay. Any questions? Or feel free to chat or put technical questions in the Q&A window. So with those opening remarks, let me get started with some basic ideas of using statistics in Origin. The first thing I wanted to show you that you can display statistics in the status bar. Status bar is at the bottom of Origin. So if I go click and select a column, Origin will immediately show statistics there. It's showing me what's the average value, what's the sum, how many counts, entries are there. I can right click here and I can customize and say, show me also min, max, and standard deviation and median, for example. Okay, then it will show all of those. So as I move around and select different data, even if I select sub range or range across multiple columns, these numbers keep updating. So that's a quick way to get some statistics. You can always right click here and you can copy this text, such as to put into your lab notes or whatever. Okay, so that's one way to examine statistics in Origin. Okay, I'm trying to see my QA window is misbehaving a little, so I'm not able to clearly see if questions are being asked. Let's see. I'll try to keep that open. Okay. So somebody asked, where can you find the App Center? So that depends on your version. If you have one of the latest versions after version 2016, the App Center is there and it's available from the View menu as well. Okay, View Apps. Okay, somebody's asking, is the data available? Yes, again, we will share the project with you when we are done and we'll put it up early next week. Okay, so now continuing with this, I can use parameter rows in a worksheet to show statistics. So you already know, as opposed to Excel, Origin has this rich metadata area on top of a worksheet where we clearly designate rows for long name, comments, units, and such. In Excel, it's just all in the data area. So that's where Origin is different. So if I go to this header area and click, and then right click, I'll see an entry called Add User Parameters. In recent versions of Origin, we have a mini toolbar for that. In the next version of Origin, rather, which is coming up in October of this year, you can simply click and a mini toolbar will pop up and you can immediately get this Add User Parameters. That opens a dialog. Here I can put any formula that I want, okay? But there are some predefined entries that Origin has put there for convenience. So I can say, get me the mean, okay, then add that. So now the mean of the data in the columns is displayed in a new label row on top. I can continue adding more. I can say, show me the standard deviation, add, okay. I can show min, add. I can show max, add. Whatever you want to quantify for your data, you can get them all there, okay. It's showing too many digits. I can customize that. I can drag all of them and select and right click and say set user defined styles in the context menu and choose more to open the dialog. And this dialog is now saying, okay, this is for setting styles. And here I can change the font, the color, etc. What I want to change is the number of decimal places. So let me say 2 decimal places and click OK. So now all of my quantities are showing only 2 decimal places. Okay. So now you can change the data. Let me just put some random numbers in there. You could be importing new data. I just wanted to show you that as the data changes, the statistics in the label rows here update. So this is live. It catches up with the data. So you could save this as a template, this book as a template, bring in new data the next day and get a quick view of the statistics on all the columns. Okay, hope that's a useful feature for you. Okay, so now let me show you spark lines. Okay, so if I have a bunch of columns, I can select them, and in recent versions of Origin, a dialog pops up which we call the mini toolbar, and there are many options here, such as one is add spark line. If you don't have the latest version, you can select the columns, go to the column menu, and add or update sparkline shows up. If I click on that, it opens a dialog where I can customize the sparkline that is shown. The sparkline is a graphical summary of the data in the column. I can change it from line plot to a histogram. So let's see how that looks. So that gives you a quick idea of how is the data distributed. Okay, I can click again and go back to that menu and then choose box plot. So there are 3 choices for the histogram. Now keep in mind, when you show box plot, the quantities in the column may be very different. So these boxes are not aligned by value. It's just giving you a rough idea of the extent of the distribution. Is it a somewhat tight distribution? Is it a broad distribution? So it's a qualitative view of your data. Okay. All right. So you also have the option in Origin to switch a worksheet from the view menu to column list view. And this is something we have done in recent versions. Control W toggles between normal view and column list view. The benefit of the column list view is that you get a much more compact view of your worksheet. You don't see all the numbers. You see only the column names and the metadata and the spark lines. Okay. So if you have tons of data, there is no point in looking at the. So you could summarize your data by statistics in the label rows and simply use the column list view and use Control W to toggle back and forth. Okay. One last thing on basic statistics. Okay, somebody is asking, can you have multiple spark lines? No, sorry, only one spark line per column and only one plot type per column. Okay, so I also want to mention that from the script window, which is based on LabTalk scripting language in Origin, and incidentally, Origin also has embedded Python, and in version 2021 coming out in October, we are making embedded Python much more powerful. You will be able to do things with Python code as well. My colleague James Chen may show some quick examples of that later today, if he has time. If you are interested in beta testing the Python feature, you can email us at tech@originlab.com. Here I'm just showing a quick LabTalk syntax. Here I can go and say stats call B. Okay, do statistics on call B. Then I can say stats dot equals. Then it gives me all the numbers for column B. Similarly, I can do quantiles call B to compute quantiles. Then I can say quantiles dot equals to get the quantiles, which are the mean, median, the median and the quartiles and such. So just letting you know that a little bit of scripting can then take you further in terms of customizing and doing things with your data. Okay. Somebody's asking, how can I insert the spark lines? Simply select the columns or the entire sheet that you want. And like I said, in recent menus, there is a button for it. But if you don't see the button, you can go to add or update spark lines. Okay, let's move on. Okay. Now let me show you some statistics tools from the menu. Okay, so first I want to take this data. I have height and weight and age and gender, and I want to compute the mean, median, etc. for height and weight column using gender as my grouping variable. Okay, so let me go to the stats menu, and I'm going to show you first a tool called Stats Advisor. We added that a few versions ago. This tool is useful for you to get an idea of which tool is appropriate for your analysis. So it's a wizard that asks you a series of questions, and then it will suggest to you which tool is available, which app is available, and then you can go from there. So I'm going to show several examples of this tool. First, let me just take the simplest, summarize. I just want to summarize the data, my height and weight. I just want basic statistics such as mean, standard deviation, and such. So the advisor is telling me all of these options are available for me. Statistics on columns, stats on rows, pivot table, box chart, means plot. So let me just choose statistics on columns and open the dialog. Okay. When I do that, the Stats Advisor grays out and stays in the background. I personally find that a little annoying, but you can still see through the columns behind it. Here's my height and weight. So let me go to this dialog that opened, which is the stats on column dialog. These tools in Origin have many options. We have added options over the years. The default options may be fine for you 90% of the time, but you can always come in here and configure. So let me first say my data range. So I can go here and select my data range. I can say I want height. Okay, I can select weight. So Okay, sorry. So then it selected the columns individually. So what I can do instead is bring up my select columns dialog. There are multiple ways to select. The select columns dialog, I can double click and add the desired columns to build my list. So I have weight and height added. Click OK. So you see that the range now shows 2 entries. Then I can say group them based on gender. Okay, let me just do that much and click OK and see what happens. So Origin is asking the stats has been done. Do you want to switch to the report sheet? Okay, let me close the advisor and we can go look at the book. I started with the raw sheet. Now I have 2 more sheets. So this sheet is now showing me the summary, the weight and height for female versus male, how many entries were there, what were the mean values, what was the standard deviation, the sum, the min, max, and such. There is another sheet which is simply the same information in a simpler format, so you can quickly go make plots or do further calculations based on this. These sheets are report sheets. You cannot really plot from them or do further computations on them. They're more for summary presentation. You can click here, copy as HTML, paste it into Word or your lab notebook or whatever. Okay. With all such operations, I can click on the lock. When you do an operation in Origin that takes an input data, performs a task, creates a report or calculates a column, etc., usually there's a lock. And that lock basically links the input to the output. So I can click change parameter to bring up the dialog. Then I can change things. I can go to quantities and add. I want lower confidence level, upper confidence level, whatever I want to customize. I can go to the plots and say, oh yeah, give me some box charts. And click OK. So the same report just simply updates. So Origin remembers your configuration. Whenever you click here and do change parameters, you can go keep changing your analysis parameters and it keep updating the report. Of course, you can do a new analysis if you wish to, but this lets you configure your analysis till you're happy. Then you could save this as an analysis template, bring in new data. We have webinars on that, how to create an analysis template, how to do batch analysis. So you might want to look up those webinars to learn more. Okay. Now going back, let me show you another tool. So here I have some replicate measurements for dose response. I have dose and I have 3 replicate measurements. I want to summarize it row by row so that I get the mean and the standard deviation. So then I can select all 3 columns, go to the statistics menu. This time, let me just go to descriptive stats. Here is the stats on columns that you just saw. Let me choose stats on rows. Okay. So here, because I selected the columns already, Origin already knows the data range. It has been pre-populated. Okay, there is no grouping in this case. So then I can go to my quantities and I can check all or uncheck. And I really only want mean and standard deviation. Okay, uncheck everything else. Under quantiles, everything is unchecked. That's it. That's all I want. And I click OK. So now you see it computed the mean and standard deviation. So this mean is reported as a Y column and standard deviation is reported as an error column. And over here is my X column. So I can choose these 2 columns, go to the plot menu. Under basic 2D, I can do a scatter plot. Okay, so now it's plotting my dose, my response, mean, and standard deviation as a function of dose. Then I could do curve fitting with this, convert the dose to log, whatever that you typically do with pharma data. Okay? Please tell me if I'm going too fast. I'm trying to speak slowly and we may not cover all of the topics, but I wanted to cover basics so that you get a broad understanding of what's possible in Origin. Okay? For my next example, I'm going to look at graphs and do some statistics on the graph. Okay. So here I have some data. Maybe it's a measurement across time. I'm measuring some critical parameter to see is it staying within some limits. We do have control charts and stuff in Origin, and that's an area is perhaps a little weak in Origin. If you are interested in that area, we would like to hear from you. What else should we add? Okay, so what I first want to show you is adding reference line. So I want to annotate this graph with a mean line, a plus minus 1 standard deviation line, and a min and a max line. So if I click on the layer, in recent versions, in the most recent version, I believe, we added a button here to quickly add reference lines. I'll show you later how to do that in the old version. Okay, so if I click here, a menu pops up saying, what reference line do you want? I can click on mean. Mean was added. I click here again. I want plus 1 standard deviation. I want minus 1 standard deviation. I want the min, and I want the max. So my data now is annotated. I can select all of these and kind of nudge them to the right with my arrow key or just drag with the mouse. So now the data is nicely annotated. Now watch this. If I go here, I have a little bit of script to change the data. So you can see that as I change the data, the reference lines are changing too. So the reference lines actually look at the actual data plotted in the graph, and when the data changes, the reference lines update. Okay. Just to show you what the script behind this button is, I'm going to hold the Alt key and double click. So when you have a text label in a graph or a worksheet, you can convert that to a button and put a few lines of script. Here it is laptop script. In the next version, you'll be able to even run Python script. So this script just says fill column 2 with normal distribution of 50 values, multiply that by 15, add 50, and round it off to the nearest integer. So that's the expression here. Okay, so that's laptop. So as I click, it keeps changing the data. Main purpose I put in the script was not to teach you how to script, but just to show you that the reference lines are live. They catch up when the data changes. So if you are streaming in data or importing new measurement data, the reference line will update. So you could save such graph as a template. Okay. Now, where did the reference lines really get added? To see that, I can double click and open the Access dialog in Origin. Okay. And you will see there's a reference line tab. This was added many versions ago. Okay. And then if I go look at my horizontal reference lines, because that's what I added horizontal lines. You'll see that what I did with that button was basically to add a mean, a standard deviation plus minus, and min and max. So if I choose any of them and click details, it opens another, which is where all the expressions are. So the mean is, of course, has a certain syntax. Okay. There are many options here, and these are all laptop syntax, but Origin populates the menu with pretty much everything you typically need. So you could just select that and the syntax would automatically update. Then you can do other things like customize. If you wanted the mean line to be much thicker, for example, thickness of 3 or maybe even thickness of 5, etc., and click OK to close this dialog, click OK to close out of here. So my mean line is thicker. Okay. My reason for showing you that is if you have an older version, you will have to go here and enter your own expressions by clicking on the details or adding new, okay? Because the mini toolbar button that I showed you is only in the latest version, which gives you a quick access to add reference lines, okay? Hope that was helpful. All right, moving on. Let's now look at a few more examples of doing exploratory statistics on graphs. Okay, we are about halfway there. Keep your questions coming. I see my colleague is helping as well. Somebody's asking, let's see, is there an add button at the bottom of that dialog? Yeah, please explore that dialog for reference lines. We have tutorials. You can simply press F1 on any dialog and it will open detailed help pages. And you can go from there and you can simply read our documentation, and usually there are links to tutorials. We have hundreds of videos on YouTube. You can watch them as well. And last but not the least, there is always tech support. Feel free to contact tech support and we would be happy to help you. My colleagues in tech support, I'm giving a shout out for them. They are excellent. They have many years of experience in Origin and they always bend over backwards to help customers. Okay. Okay, moving on. Let me not spend too much time on reference lines. Let me go on to some gadgets. Okay. So if I have a graph like this and I want to annotate it quickly with some mean, standard deviation and so on, but I want to do it region wise. Only let's say I want to get the statistics below power of 100 and statistics above power of 100. So when a graph is active, we have a gadgets menu. Keep in mind, the gadgets menu will not be available when a book is active, okay? Because gadgets are for graphs. Gadgets were tools that we added long time ago before apps became a concept. So we still have many gadgets. We kept them where they are for backward compatibility. So one of them is statistics. And the statistics gadget has a customized theme, mean plus 1 standard deviation. So let me just open that and show you what happens. So as I move my gadget around, my region of interest around, it's analyzing only that part of the data that the gadget is covering. Okay. So that's the idea with these gadgets. They are based on a region of interest. So I can expand this region of interest to just about power equal to 100. Then I can click here and there are several options. One of them is okay. The other is new output. So the output will go to results log. Then you can see what the results are. It also gets dumped to the script window. There are several options. You can go to preferences and you can decide where the output should go to. You want to append it to a worksheet. That's fine. You can turn off the script and results log. Then you can click here and say output again. This time it will go to a workbook. So it's accumulating all the statistics here. It's clearly telling you what input range it's using and what are the parameters. Then I can come move this from 100 to the last data points. Click here, tag the lines again, click here, new output again, and close the dialog. So now my graph has the mean and standard deviations line drawn for the two regions. So I can quickly compare how the means look like. So this mean is clearly outside plus or minus 1 standard deviation of this region. I'm just using a very trivial example. You may have much better data for this type of task. Okay. And then your summary sheet has all the parameters. So this is a nice tool to explore statistics on a graph. Okay. Let me show another one, cluster gadget. And this gadget, keep in mind, some gadgets are available only in Pro. Okay, so you may not see it in your menu if you have standard Origin. And all of that is documented, like I showed you right at the beginning, the statistics page. If you go there, you will see details. Okay, so here I have Fisher's iris data, and I have plotted petal length versus width for the flowers. And you can see that there is already a category, different species, Setosa, versicolor, virginica, and some categories are very clearly separated. Some others are mixed in. And I want to grab some that are very clearly separated from this versicolor group and very clearly separated from this virginica group and tag them for further analysis. So I don't end up with some that are borderline mixed. Okay. So let me go to gadgets menu and fire up the cluster gadget. Okay. This gadget has many options. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to quickly show you some of the options. So let me choose the ROI shape from rectangle to circle. Customers have asked for freehand. We haven't done that yet. We may do that in the version coming up next year. Okay. So this gives you an ROI. I can kind of skew it, make it into a circular shape or an ellipse, etc. to select just the data I have. This is clearly Setosa anyway. That's clearly separated. But in the tool, there is an option to add my own grouping. So let me click on that button, and it's asking me what to call the group. I can call it confirmed. And I can say these points are confirmed as setosa. Okay, and click OK. And what will you will see in the worksheet, it added a new column called confirmed, and it took the points that I selected and marked them as setosa. Everything else is undefined still. Okay. Then we come back to the graph, and now I'm going to nudge this ROI over to here and grab some of these clearly separated versicolor points. Then I can click the create category button again, keep the category name the same, and enter my versicolor. Okay, and click OK. And let me then do that also for clearly separated Virginica. Okay, and click this and name this as Virginica. Okay, and click OK. There are several other options in this tool. You may notice as I am moving around, it's showing statistics. You can mask the data, you can delete the data, many options. So you could explore those. My main purpose here was to just do some cluster identification. So if you go here and see now, you'll see here are my confirmed ones, but you see many are undefined because those were the points that were sort of in the area that it could be this, could be that, and they are left out. Okay. Of course, this is a very visual way of separating. There are statistical ways of doing modeling to find regions that are clearly separated. My colleague may show that if he has time later, or we may, I believe, have another webinar. And with 2021B coming and with Python, there are several possibilities of doing machine learning, etc., to separate data. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the next tool. Let me quickly see what the questions are. Okay. User is commenting that they had asked for freehand selection and for shortcut for create categories. Yes, we did receive all the requests. Thank you. But it will not be in the upcoming version. The upcoming version, the features are frozen because it's very close to release. Okay. So let's go look at frequency count binning and do a few exercises. So here I have player height and player weight for NBA players. This is some old data, okay? And this column shows the drafting, where they drafted in round 1, where they drafted in round 2, or where they undrafted. And my objective is to see, is there any bias? Is the height distributed differently for players who were drafted in round 1 versus 2 versus undrafted? So I want to do a frequency count on height, but use draft round as a grouping column. So let's go to the statistics menu, choose descriptive stats, and choose frequency counts, and open the dialog. Okay. In the dialog, I'm going to say my data is indexed. So many tools, statistics tools in Origin have raw versus indexed. Index would mean that I have another column that has the group category. Raw would be when all your groups are broken up into several columns. I'll show an example of that later. So typically the data that customers work with are indexed because there is a column that has the grouping side by side to the data. Okay, so I set it to index, and I'm going to choose my data range to be player height, and I'm choosing my group range to be the draft round, which round were they drafted in. And then there are several options here for binning and such. I only want bin centers, and I don't want the cumulative count. I only want the counts. So let me choose those and click OK. Now I get a sheet that has the binned heights of the players and the distribution, how many counts there are for round 2, round 1, undrafted. Easier way to look at this is to make a graph. Let me select the columns, go to the plot menu. Under basic 2D, I'm going to make a column plot. Okay. And let me make this layer a little wider. In recent versions, we have added a nice feature. If you just drag and change a layer like that, move your legend, etc., you can just simply use the mini toolbar, click and say, fit the page to the layer. So then the page will automatically resize to accommodate everything that's related to the layer. And there are other nice features like I can play with the bars, change the colors and such. So for my purpose anyway, you see green is round 1, okay? Orange is round 2, and this, what is it? Purple, violet is undrafted. So you'll see that round 1, there was a bias towards players who had a higher height. So it's skewed. So that makes sense. The taller players were picked first, perhaps. And then the other two show more of a broad distribution without much skewing, okay? Just a very simple interpretation of the data. Looking at it graphically and interpreting may not be appropriate. There are tools in Origin to measure skewness and such. Okay. Just wanted to show you the capability of doing frequency counts and then quickly making a graph from the results. Okay. Let's look at the data in another way. Now I want to take the player weight and height and take one column as the binning factor and bin the other column, okay? So this has come up quite often and we made an app for it, and the app is called 1D histogram. I have already added that to my app collection here. Let me close the script window here, move some things around so I can view my app screen here. So in the stats group, I have a 1D binning app. So let me click that and open the 1D binning tool, okay? So if you don't have this app, you can simply go get it. It's free. So then it's asking me for several inputs here. So input 1 is the data that I want to bin on. So I want to bin on the weight, the player weight, okay? Move this dialog a little bit to the left, player weight. Okay, then what I want to do is to categorize the player height. Data set to compute the quantiles on. So choose height, choose what I want to compute, mean and standard deviation, for example, and click OK. Then it will give me now a distribution where it's giving me the frequency counts. I didn't really want the bin end. So let me change parameters and turn off the bin end. Okay, to make it simpler, I just wanted bin center and count. So it's now giving me bin center based on the height and count, weight and count, but it's then showing me the mean and standard deviation as a function of the player's weight. So if I go plot this, you'll see, if I go plot it as a scatter plot, it's plotting the height as a function of weight and showing me the distribution, mean and standard deviation. Okay, maybe a useful tool for your analysis of data, so check out that app. Okay, let's see what the time is. Okay, I have another 15 minutes or so. Okay, so let me quickly talk about distribution fit. We often get the question from users. They have one column of data, some counts, measurements, say, and they want to do a Gaussian fit using the nonlinear fitter. Okay, that's prone to errors. And let me tell you why. So here I took that data, I already binned it. I did a frequency count where I used very narrow binning and I've used a very broad binning. Then I did a Gaussian fit. If you don't know curve fitting, there are webinars on that you can attend. So what I wanted to show you here is when I do the fitting, my centroid and the width are different based on how I bin the data. Because obviously I have only one parameter. I do not have an X and a Y. I only have one measurement and I'm binning it. And the way I bin it can influence fitting. So it's not really appropriate to take one column of data, bin it, and then do curve fitting. For that purpose, we have a much better option under descriptive stats. We have added distribution fit. So I can open that dialog and then choose which distributions I want to test. I can say, is this data normal? Is it log normal? Is it exponential? Then I can say goodness of fit. What type of goodness of fits I want to choose? So now everything is done in a methodical, statistical way. So if I click OK now, then I'll get a report here, and the report will clearly tell me, can I use the normal distribution to describe this data? So statistically, it says can't reject normal, which means normal is appropriate. It's saying reject log normal, reject exponential. So I cannot describe this data as a log normal or exponential, but I can describe it as normal. Then if I come up here, it clearly shows me the parameters. The location, which is a centroid, mu, and the standard deviation. So these are purely based on the raw data. There is no bias of binning, which is what I wanted to show you, okay? So if you are looking at distributions and trying to determine which distribution is appropriate and what are the parameters purely based on the statistical analysis of the raw data, then that's the tool for you, okay? Let's move on and look at an example of correlation. I'm throwing quite a few tools at you. Perhaps it's a little overwhelming, and I want to point out that this webinar is being recorded, so you can always come back and play it. And then the project will be given to you, so you can play back at your leisure and play with the data that I'm using today. So I'm just going to show you quickly a very nice app that we created for correlation plots, okay? So here I have a bunch of columns. I just did Control W to show it in a compact view. This is old data, keep in mind, of protein consumption in Europe, different countries, and red meat, white meat, eggs, cereal, starch, etc. consumption. I want to see, is there any correlation between the different types of food that's consumed? So there is a correlation plot app. Origin has some tools for it, but this app is really nice, so I wanted to show you the app. Okay, you can check out the tools in Origin as well. So the first thing in this app to do is select the columns that are numerical. Okay, so I leave out country and I'll select all the other columns. There is a preview window. So as I select, you see it's adding more and more of the columns. So now I have a view of the relationship between each pair. Okay, so it's taking red meat versus white meat versus milk, etc. There are several options here. I can choose a mixed format, which will show the correlation as a graphical representation on one diagonal part of the matrix. The other diagonal part can be a number, and I can go here and say change it to an ellipse, okay? And the layout is upper lower triangular, and label is, for example, correlation coefficient. That's the label there. I can go back to mixed, okay? Let me see. So there are several options here you can play with. So if I stick with the ellipse, for example, let's say I just want this. I only want the lower part to be shown and the correlation coefficient, and click OK. Then I get my graph, and an ellipse that's tilted towards the right and strongly shaped as an ellipse is a strong correlation. Something that looks more like a circle is a weak correlation, and the correlation coefficient color is shown here. An ellipse that's tilted strongly to the left is a strong correlation in the other direction, right? So basically, this is telling me there is a strong correlation between red meat and eggs, okay? And there is a strong opposite correlation between, for example, cereal and egg. Okay, that's just how the data happens to be. There is a weak correlation between vegetables and white meat. Okay, there is a stronger correlation between vegetables and milk and so forth. So graphical representation to quickly see how the data is correlated. Later today at the 2 p.m. webinar, my colleague is going to show more formal tools such as using PCA, principal component analysis, and such for a more methodical analysis of such data. Okay. Somebody is asking for some app, it requires R to be installed. I have R installed, but it still crashes. No idea. If R is, for example, not working for you, do not know, please contact us. We will try to work with you to figure out what the problem is. And that's where one of the better options in 2021 would be Python. And Python would be installed by Origin itself, and it will be embedded. And we are trying to move even the R-based apps to Python-based so that you'll never have this issue of having to install something outside. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So let's go through a couple more examples and then I will wind up for today. Actually, let me skip outliers due to lack of time. We do have an outlier app and we have options in the statistics menu under descriptive stats for checking if there are outliers in a particular data set. Honestly, this is a very sensitive area. One field may like the Grubbs test, another field may like the Dixon's test, some other field may not like any test. So it's really sensitive to what's acceptable in your field of work on how to identify outliers. So I'm just going to skip on that and move to a few other examples, okay? You can come back and look at tutorials on outliers and also check out the app, okay? I want to show you an example of t-test. We have several of those. So here, I want to show you again the stats advisor and use that. Okay, so here I have a measurement. This is an interesting measurement where zinc concentration in a water sample was tested, but it's in the same body of water. The testing was done at the bottom of the body of water and also at the surface of the body of water. Say it was a lake. Samples were collected from the bottom and the surface. So the data is related. It's from the same sample with different samplings. If you know what I mean. So how to find an appropriate test for this? So let me keep the worksheet active and I'm going to go to the stats menu and choose stats advisor. And this time I'm going to say, I want to compare means, medians, variance. That's my purpose here. I just want to compare. Is there a difference in zinc concentration in the samples collected at the top of the water versus at the bottom of the body of water? So what do I want to compare? I want to compare means and medians. Okay. Then does this test assume the data are normally distributed? Yes. Okay. I happen to know. There are tests for checking is it distributed normally. Okay. You can check that out from the menu. How many groups are there? I have one group with 2 levels. Okay. I have sampling at the top of the water, bottom of the water. Does each subject contain 2 treatments? That's paired or not? In this case, it's a yes, because I am selecting samples from the same body of water. Okay, it's not 2 distinct measurements. So then Origin is saying you should use pair sample t-test. If I had chosen no, Origin will say use 2 sample t-test. So what I wanted to drive at is this advisor can only advise you assuming you know what the data is. Okay, you have to know what is the measurement that you made, and then you have to answer the questions correctly for Origin to recommend to you the appropriate tool. If you do not understand your data and you make a wrong choice, you will end up with the wrong tool and you will end up with the wrong conclusion. So this tool is not going to do it all for you. You need to understand your data. Okay. So pair sample t-test is what I need. So then I can open dialog and then I can choose my first data range is the bottom and the second data range is the surface, and then click OK. Okay, and then let me close the advisor and go back to my worksheet. It added a nice report with all the statistics, and with all stats tool, when there is a clear conclusion, we have something called a footnote. So it says here at the 0.05 level, or rather at 95% confidence level, the difference of population means is significantly different from the test difference. So basically it's saying the two are different. So you can go back as an exercise and try to do it without the pairing, and you'll see you get a different conclusion. Okay. I have a few minutes left. So let me end with one quick example of means comparison for more than 2 measurements. So you can apply a t-test when you have 2 measurements, whether they're paired or not. In my case, I have 4. Okay. So I have nitrogen consumption that were measured in 4 species of plants: plant 1, plant 2, plant 3, plant 4. And I want to compare the means. So it's not appropriate to take 2 of them, do a t-test. then take another 2, do a t-test, then take another 2, do a t-test. That's absolutely not statistically appropriate. That's where ANOVA comes in. And my colleague James Chen is going to show you more advanced examples of ANOVA later today. Okay? But what I wanted to show you is that we have a nice app for paired comparison, which is based on the same technique as ANOVA. I'm going to show that to you here, and James will show you ANOVA later in the 2 p.m. webinar. So let me fire up that app. Okay, so in the app, it's asking me, is my data raw or index? Remember, I talked about raw versus index before. This is raw data because I don't have a column with the categories of plant 1, 2, 3, and 4. They just happen to be in separate columns. So I need to choose raw. So then I can choose my data columns, plant 1, okay, plant 2, plant 3, and plant 4. I can reorder them if they are not in the correct order. Then the display has several options. Do you want data points? Do you want a bar chart? Let me stick with the bar chart. Then there are options. Do you want a significance mark on top? Do you want asterisks with bracket on top? Let me choose the second one and click OK. It's going to create me a nice graph where if you look, it's saying essentially, first of all, let's look at the bars. You can clearly see that these 3 bars for plant 1, 2, and 3, the means are pretty much very close to each other within the error bar, right? So what it's showing me is that plant 4 is distinctly different. When I compare plant 4 with plant 1, there is a significant difference. When I compare with plant 2, there is a significant difference, 3 stars. When I compare with plant 3, it's a little closer, difference of 2, significance with 2 stars. I can always click this, do change parameters, and change it to something else, such as p-values with bracket. Okay, so then it's going to recompute and show me the p-values. So in this case, the p-values are less than 0.001. In this case, the p-value is less than 0.01. Okay. So this is a very useful app if you're looking for a quick graphical way of doing means comparison rather than going into a more detailed ANOVA analysis. Okay. You see, at this point, let me ask my colleague Jennifer Swick to run the poll. Your feedback is much appreciated. It helps us fine-tune such webinars. Perhaps this was too much material for you. Perhaps it was too little. Maybe you would like to see a different webinar with focus on some of the subtopics. Those are the kind of comments we are looking for. We would much appreciate your input. Thank you for joining us today. And again, I want to emphasize there is a webinar at 2 p.m. So to get a full understanding of the statistics features in Origin and Origin Pro, I recommend you attend that. If you cannot make it to the 2 p.m. webinar, please come back and look at the recording later. I'm going to leave the Q&A and the comments open. You can continue asking questions or post comments. Thank you again.